Merci. Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. Merci pour cette aimable introduction. Ça me fait grand plaisir d'être ici aujourd'hui. C'est un grand honneur pour moi. Malheureusement, je ne peux pas parler le français assez bien pour accompagner ma présentation. Par conséquent, comme je n'ai pas beaucoup de temps aujourd'hui, je parlerai en anglais. Les diapos sont en français, cependant. J'espère que ce n'est pas confus et si la traduction est mauvaise, c'est ma faute. Je pense qu'il est particulièrement approprié de discuter de la vie du Dr. Zollinger à la conférence aujourd'hui, puisqu'il a apporté des contributions importantes à notre compréhension de la physiologie et de la chirurgie du pancréas. It is my good fortune to be the author of a new biography of Dr. Zollinger, published by the American College of Surgeons last year. The contributions and accomplishments of Dr. Zollinger are many. He was president of the Department of Surgery at Ohio State University for 27 years. He also led the American College of Surgeons, American Surgical Association, Society of University Surgeons, and the American Board of Surgery. During World War II, he was a senior consultant in general surgery in the European Theater of Operations, and for 28 years was editor-in-chief of the American Journal of Surgery. Of course, he's most famous as the discoverer of the Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, and he was the author through 7 editions of the Atlas of Surgical Operations. In all, his CV shows 356 publications. Dr. Zollinger was born in Millersport, Ohio, Midwest in the USA, in 1903. His family were all farmers. This picture, that's Robert Zollinger. He was heavily influenced, that's also Robert Zollinger as a boy. He was heavily influenced by the work culture of his farm family. He went to the Ohio State University in 1921, where he did well in every language except French. He later said that his French teacher could have failed him and he then would never have made it into medical school. She didn't fail him, and so he had a love for the French ever since. He was admitted to medical school after 2 years and was a medical student from 1923 to 1927. Of note, he was a mediocre student in surgery. Nevertheless, he traveled to Boston in 1926 to interview for internship, and there he met the great Harvey Cushing, who interviewed him and saw something of greatness. He did not, however, have a position for it for another year, so Dr. Cushing recommended that Zollinger spend 6 months with Cushing's former student, Elliot Cutler, in Cleveland. So who were these two men, Harvey Cushing and Elliot Cutler? Cushing at that time was probably the most famous surgeon in America, a Moseley professor at Harvard, and of course a pioneer of neurosurgery in the States. Cutler had been a student of Cushing and had served with him in France in the Great War, and was at that point surgeon-in-chief at the Lakeside Hospital in Cleveland. He was an early surgeon working in the cardiac area too. When Dr. Zollinger arrived in Cleveland, Cutler assigned him this task to work on brain tumor specimens, and this led to his first publication, Histologic Study of Tumors of the Central Nervous System. Dr. Cutler was a tremendous inspiration for Dr. Zollinger, as he eloquently puts in that quote. Now he returned to Boston to begin his internship here, which was a 16-month period, in fact. He admitted later that his performance was also mediocre as an intern. Near the end of his internship, Dr. Zollinger went to Dr. Cushing to ask where he should go for the next period of training. And Dr. Cushing said, "It's not where you want to go, it's who wants you." He went back to Cleveland to study with Dr. Cutler and commenced residency in July of 1929. He also married his wife at that same point. And then now under Dr. Cutler, he became very productive, wrote many articles, and was excellent both in the operating room and on the wards. In 1932, Dr. Cutler was awarded Dr. Cushing's prior position as Moseley Professor at Harvard, and he took Dr. Zollinger as a resident with him to Boston. So in September of 1932, Zollinger returned as now a chief resident to Boston. That's him leading the chart review on Sunday mornings. Now he was reacquainted with his colleagues in Boston who did not have much respect for Ohio State University and said so. He asked him what he learned, and he said, "Ask me and you'll find out." They were very impressed, and soon he became a faculty member as an assistant professor in July of 1934. Early in his career, he did what we all do early in our career, which is to write, do research, and teach, and later in a career as well. At this point, Cutler had an idea for a book, an idea he had gotten from this book, the Précises Iconographie, which was published in 1854 here in Paris. This was a manual of surgery with text on the left side and images on the right. And this became the model for their book, The Atlas of Surgical Operations, which was first published in 1939. There are 84 chapters. Cutler wrote 3 of them, and Zollinger wrote 81 of them. Towards the end of the writing, Dr. Zollinger went to Dr. Cutler and asked him whose name should be first on the book. Cutler thought and then said, "I think we should do things alphabetically." And that's what we see now. On Sunday, December 7th of 1941, Dr. Zollinger was driving to see a patient in Boston when he heard the news of Pearl Harbor and America's entrance into World War II, and immediately thought to himself these words. The reason why was because Dr. Cutler had convinced all of the members of the staff of the Brigham Hospital to become reserves in the United States Army, and so when war was declared, they were automatically in the Army. Dr. Zollinger arrived in Europe and Ireland in May of 1942. This is him with, you may remember or know, Dr. Dunphy, J.M. Dunphy. That's him when they were both in the Army. Soon he became the head of surgery for the 5th General Hospital, which was the Peter Brigham Hospital's base hospital in Europe. Cutler himself was too important for this. He was the chief consultant in surgery for the European theater for the Allies. The work that Zollinger did early was on the mobile surgical hospitals and on shock treatment. And he did so well in that. In 1943, Cutler asked him to become a consultant in general surgery, which he became that year. His job there was to evaluate personnel and distribute them according to their expertise, and also to collect data from the treatment of the wounded, and ultimately to publish this book just before the invasion, the manual of therapy for the European theater. On June 6th, Dr. Zollinger was in charge of surgery on the transport ships back and forth between England and Normandy. And a few weeks later, he arrived in Normandy itself. While he was based at Isigny, he coordinated the local hospitals, and then after the breakout of the Battle of Saint-Malo, he followed the 1st and 3rd armies through France and into Germany. This is Dr. Zollinger here in Paris after the liberation by General Leclerc. Zollinger was eventually made commander of that 5th General Hospital when the job of the consultants was done. This is him with Dunphy again. And was a full colonel at the end of the war. He was awarded medals for service in Normandy and French in the north of France and the Rhineland, as well as a Legion of Merit for the idea of the mobile surgical hospitals and the development. He returned to Boston in October of 1945 after having been away for 3.5 years. Some of you may know his son, Robert Zollinger Jr., is also a noted surgeon. This is him. Almost immediately after arriving in the United States, he accepted a position on the faculty at his old alma mater, Ohio State University, and became chief of the department. When he arrived, there were 3 members of the faculty at that point, and a total of 8 residents. The first annual report that he published had 3 publications. So he set to work consolidating old and new specialties, including anesthesia, which was exploding after World War II. Hired new personnel like the brilliant Edwin Ellison, who's a scientist and a surgeon. Systematized and improved teaching with residents and medical students. Supervised research both in the laboratory and on the wards. And was present and key in development of the new university hospital that opened in 1951. He somehow found time to write another atlas, the 2nd edition. In 1949, this appeared. Had several changes, mostly due to discoveries from war. The most important patient he ever operated on or treated was this one, a 19-year-old woman who appeared at the hospital in January of 1954 with terrible abdominal pain. She'd had symptoms for 3 years and multiple operations for ulcers. When she was admitted in a 12-hour fast, she was found to have 300 milliequivalents of acid, 20 times the normal amount excreted. She was taken to surgery in January of 1954, where Dr. Zollinger performed an operation that Dr. Wangenstein had worked on for many years, what they call radical gastrectomy, not what we would call radical gastrectomy, but this was it. Removal of most of the gastric tissue. After the operation, however, the patient continued to have high gastric secretion and continued to have symptoms. She was placed on antacids and a diet. Later was even treated with radiation. I would remind you, she was 19 years old. She was readmitted to the hospital in October of 1954 and had developed more ulcers. Zollinger discussed the case with Ellison, who had had a prior case a year or so before, that was very similar. That patient had died and at autopsy had been found to have pancreatic adenomas. They operated again on this lady in November of 1954 and performed this operation, total gastrectomy of completion with esophagogingianostomy. At that time, they also biopsied the pancreas and they found what they thought were lymph nodes and biopsied these. 3 days later, at the Grand Rounds meeting, this patient was presented and the pathologist revealed that the biopsy had shown adenomas of the pancreas in the islets. These adenomas were similar to the lymph nodes in morphology and identical to what they had seen in Dr. Ellison's prior patient. So in April 1955, they presented this peptic ulcerations of the jejunum associated with islet cell tumors of the pancreas. This became known as the Zollinger-Ellison syndrome. After this, Dr. Zollinger ascended to positions of power and influence in the United States, President of Society of University Surgeons, Central Surgical, American College, SSAT, Chairman of the Board of Surgery, President of the American Surgical Association. And as I mentioned earlier, he was Editor-in-Chief. A 3rd edition of the Atlas of Surgical Operations came out in 2 volumes in the 1960s. 1961 was general surgery, and 1967 was more complex procedures like thoracic surgery and vascular. He always had a close relationship with the surgeons of France, including receiving honorary doctorate at the University of Lyon in 1965. We see him with his good friend, Professor Maleki, course, his good friend also was Maurice Mercadier, seen here with him in Paris. He's voted into this association, and the Academy. Was awarded the Medal of the City of Paris, and finally Chevalier Éloge. He was also a very avid rose grower, and in fact, Dr. Zollinger was president of the American Rose Society from 1965 to 1967. He eventually retired as chief of Department of Surgery at Ohio State in 1974. At that point, he had trained over 130 surgeons. The surgery department had 7 divisions. There were 20 residents per year, and we published over 100 articles per year from the department. He stopped operating in 1983 after 55 years, which covered the spans of 11 American presidencies. After he retired, he still published 3 more editions of the Atlas of Surgical Operations in these years, and even a biography of his old mentor, Elliot Cutler, in 1988. Dr. Zollinger died in 1992 of pancreatic cancer at the age of 88. And this is on his tablet. A man of honor and accomplishment returns here to his origins and God. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for very documenting your work here. We have no time for questions, and I think everyone can throw the game for this very nice biography.